And today's topic, I'm really excited about this one. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome exposed, beating that self-doubt. And my guest here today, Robert, tell a little bit about yourself, and for all the viewers and everybody, tell a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hey everybody. My name is Robert Collier. I am the founder of Rob Collier Coaching, and I help entrepreneurs, executives, leaders, managers, sales professionals, and aspiring entrepreneurs to accomplish more in 90 days than most people do in a year. And I do that systematically through a process that I teach my clients and one that I learned and developed myself. So, Chris, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to have this conversation with you about this topic, and looking forward to delivering some value.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We got connected through a great resource that we both have, right? We got connected, and diving right into the topic. I think one of the first questions I want to ask you, Robert, is, you hear about imposter syndrome. Could you briefly, for everybody, explain what is imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so it's actually a more complex question than on the surface. So when we look at the definition of imposter syndrome, it is that persistent inability to believe that your success is deserved, and it's been legitimately achieved through your own efforts or skills. But Chris, if you're okay with it, I'd love to actually dive down to what imposter syndrome actually is. And this is something that I never hear talked about online or really anywhere, but I want to get to the heart of it. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely. Let's get to it, man.
All right, cool. So we're going to get a little bit technical, but stick with me. There was some research done by a guy named Nathaniel Branden, and it was research on self-esteem. And what he defined and what he learned is that self-esteem has two quadrants. One is what's called self-efficacy, and the other is called self-respect, or yeah. And so self-efficacy looks at one's confidence to rise to the level of challenges in life. And that is, I believe that my thinking, my ability to make decisions is commensurate, is equal to life's challenges. That's self-efficacy. Then we have self-respect. And self-respect is, I'm worthy of happiness, that my value, my joy matters. And you can think about these things as sort of two wings of a bird, where if you want to fly, you need both of these to be operating well. And if one is slightly off tilt, then you're never flying correct in the right direction. And if the other is off tilt, you're constantly being weighed down and unable to go in the direction that you want. And so what imposter syndrome truly is, scientifically, it is when we have one of these wings slightly off. And it's typically going to be the self-respect wing. And so there's this pervasive feeling for a lot of folks who deal with imposter syndrome that, it's never enough, right? Especially for high achievers. There's constantly this ability to achieve all these great things that on the outside, others would congratulate us on and tell us that we're doing a great job. But internally, it feels like it's not enough. And that's because this wing is slightly tilted and off. So that's actually the real definition of imposter syndrome. And I'm sure we can go deeper into it as well.
Man, I love, Robert, how you talked about that and you gave the quadrants, right? And I just know, like, I think the first time, and this is me being honest and vulnerable to everybody, the first time I came across imposter syndrome, and to everybody, I love this topic so much because even still today, I struggle with this. Like, this is a Achilles heel for me as a leader, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. And I remember the first time I came across imposter syndrome, and it was when I was in high school, ironically enough. I was very gifted in math classes. Like, if you can't tell, like, oh, a CFO not gifted in math. Yes. I was like in the honors level classes. I was like, as an 8th grader, taking like advanced calculus. And I remember finding myself, Robert, in this room, and I'll just be transparent with everybody, right? I was in this room. I'm a minority, right? Like, I'm Latino, I'm Italian, my mom is African American and Caucasian. So like I'm the other box, right? And I remember being in this room and I just was like, I don't think I should be here. Like I felt out of place. I felt like my quantitative skills that got me in that arena, that I didn't deserve it, right? I'm around all these kids that are super smart. And when I was in high school, Pike High School, like most of the honors and advanced level classes, you had primarily, Caucasian people in there. And these were high influential people that are, did family vacations and had all this stuff. And that was like the first time I encountered this. And honestly, it's followed me throughout my career. And I think for people, it's subtle. That's the thing that I've learned about imposter syndrome, is that it's subtle. It kind of like creeps in over time. Like, I don't think you wake up one day and you're just like, oh man, like imposter syndrome is here. It's spaced out over time. At least for me, I've encountered this plenty of stages, and I'm looking forward to sharing more and hearing your insights. So one of my follow-up questions to the quadrants that you talked about is, let's talk about self-respect. What are some ways that you've coached or you've worked with people that they can like rebalance that quadrant for them? What are some action items or practical tips that you want to share to level up that self-respect?
Yeah. Well, first, your story mimics very much mine as well. I was also the kid in honors classes, did well in math, and didn't feel like I wasn't sure that I belonged there, right? Like I remember actually really quickly, I remember being I think it was in second grade. It was in second grade where I was told that the teachers wanted to hold me back. And I was kind of troubled kid, but troubled in just that I just talked a lot. And I was constantly, just getting in trouble for talking too much in class, being a class clown, etc. And then I ended up getting some help from some extra attention in the areas of my life and in the classroom. And as a result of that, by fourth grade, that same school that wanted to hold me back 2 grades actually wanted to push me forward 2 grades. They said that Robert doesn't need to be in the fourth grade. He should be with sixth graders and up. So many times, like there is that imposter syndrome. And to your point, like it just shows up in various aspects of life. Sometimes it appears and sometimes it disappears. And so it has that ability to pop up. But you're asking a great question in terms of what are some of those practical things that we can do with the levels of self-respect. And first, what I want to do is I want to paint a picture of how this can actually impact us. And so when we talk about self-respect, beyond just the terminology of self-respect, that is the conviction of my own value, that I matter, that my happiness matters, and that I deserve to be happy. Now, let me give you a couple examples of what happens when that is not in alignment, using that metaphor of the bird. So when it's in disalignment, what happens is, let's just say, for example, maybe you are in line for a promotion, right? So you have this promotion coming up, and in the back of your mind, you're just like, I don't know that I deserve this. I don't know that I belong here. And so what happens is you have this fear. And so often with fear, the thing that we fear, we precipitate, and it actually becomes reality. And so in that case of maybe getting a promotion, you may begin to do things such as in the past, you were always on time with your work. Well, now you may miss a deadline and get it done afterwards. You may snipe at your manager, your boss. You may do something that's inappropriate. And then as a result of that, you don't get the promotion. And in the back of your mind, what you say is, see, I knew that I didn't deserve that. I knew that I didn't belong. I knew that this was going to fail. Because unfortunately, Chris, what happens a lot of times is most people would rather be right than to be happy.
Ooh, wow. That right there, Robert, like that is, I think, one of the most important things that you talked about in there, and like right versus happy. And I think like and if I could give some, just to add on to what you said, like negative self-talk for everybody is real. Here's another, me raising my hand to everybody. Like I am the worst critic then like I'm so hard on myself all the time. Like there's never, and I learned this when I was younger. I learned this when I played basketball, when I was, when I was boxing. Like there's never anybody going to be harder on myself than me. And I think where I've struggled in that self-respect side that's caused me to, bounce in and out of imposter syndrome is really that negative self-talk, right? And there's a great quote. I don't know who says this, and I'll make sure if you know who said this quote, drop it in the comments, and I would love to see. But it says, "When there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do no harm." Like that's so powerful because one of the good ways to I think that I've leveled up that self-respect is like I stop that negative self-talk, right? Where maybe I make a mistake and like everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect, right? And I say, it's okay, Chris. Give yourself that grace and say, hey, I've made this mistake, but here's what I learned from it, right? So I've always taken that negative self-talk and said, hey, if it's a learning and coachable moment that I can learn and be better for myself or help somebody else to prevent from making that same mistake, then that's a win. But I think a lot of it starts with you got to really get focused. You've got to really get intentional about that internal self-talk that you have, right? And I see it time and time again. I see it with entrepreneurs. I see it with business owners. I see it with founders. I see it with clients that we help support at Fresh FP&A. It's just like once that creeps in, it's like it's like a multiplying effect, right? It's like once that negative self-doubt creeps in and you don't eliminate it, then that becomes an idea, and ideas become actions, and actions become results, and results become impact, right? So to me, it's like you got to really start at the root cause. And to me, it starts with that negative self-talk, man.
I love that. I love that. That's absolutely a great tip.